Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Trustcast Show. And we're really happy to have with us this morning Michael Cowen, or Cowen. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you.
Michael runs one of the top trucking injury firms in the country, Host Trial Nation or Trial Lawyer Nation, and he's publicly committed to paying out $100 million in referral fees over the next 5 years. You earned top score on the Texas bar exam. This goes back so many years. The clerk for the Fifth Circuit, landed at Coldwater Wickersham, and then you left all that and to represent truck crash victims in San Antonio. What happened to change your?
Well, there's two parts. One is knowing what I wanted to do, and one was a girl. And so I actually liked working in big law, but I had met a young lady 6 weeks before I moved to New York City. I'm from a little town called Brownsville, Texas, and we were doing the long distance dating thing, and that really motivated me to want to move back to Texas. And so I was interviewing with firms. I still was looking more at bigger firms, defense firms. And this sounds really weird, but I had worked for a couple of plaintiffs lawyers during the school year for money while I was in law school because I needed beer money. And I enjoyed the work, but I still, hadn't thought to go into plaintiffs law at that career. And I'd asked a federal judge that I knew from when I was clerking, like, hey, these firms I'm interviewing with, what do you think about them? He goes, well, this one's really good. This one, they're all right. You should go interview with these two. But, I've been out of the state court system. You should talk to my friend, Ed Stapleton. He's does more state court stuff. And Ed was a plaintiff's lawyer. I said, well, I'll call him, but can you call him first? Because it's weird to call someone that I've only met once in my life. He goes, yeah, I'll let him know. So I call Ed and I said, Ed, I've got, or Mr. Stapleton at the time, I've had this firm wants to hire me. This firm wants to hire me. What do you think? He goes, well, they're fine firms, but you should work for me for three reasons. One, I won't pay you as much money, but I will teach you to try cases. They don't know how to try cases. I will let you try cases. They'll lie to you. They won't really let you go in there and try cases. And I'll send you to the Jerry Spence Trial Lawyers College, and you can't go if you're a defense lawyer. And so I actually just prayed about it. And God, give me a sign. I don't know what to do. There's the traditional route. It pays more early on. It's more prestigious. It makes my mom happier. Or kind of sounds fun being a plaintiff's lawyer. I think my heart's going to be more in that. And in big law, you often get an assignment like 4 or 5 in the afternoon that's due the next morning, and you're going to work all night. And I got an assignment. There were class action cases filed against a bunch of Swiss banks for basically keeping Holocaust victims' deposits and then not releasing them after World War II because Auschwitz didn't give out death certificates. And I had to work all night on a project researching the particular law from the time Hitler came to power till the time of my project. And I said, God, I think you gave me a sign that I'm on the wrong side. The next day, I called and accepted, took a big pay cut, 35% pay cut initially, although I think I'm actually better off than a lot of the big law partners now, ironically. But that began my journey.
Wow. So I just watched the Nuremberg trials yesterday. So that was
Yeah,
very
I actually just
appropriate.
met a relative in New Jersey, like a third or fourth cousin, and evidently from the Cowens were Cohens before they came to America, and three brothers left Poland in the early 1800s, and all the rest of our family was wiped out in the Holocaust. And so
Wow.
that one really hit me like I'm really on the wrong side of this.
So you've handled over 1,000 trucking and company vehicle cases. What made you decide to go that deep into one niche instead of being like a general PI attorney?
Well, I didn't start that way, and it wasn't my first niche. I gained everybody wants to do trucking cases if you're in PI. They're great cases, they're fun cases, and I gained the ability and the referral relationships that allowed me to specialize in it. So I had to earn it. I started off by doing soft tissue disputed liability or disputed causation car accident cases on referral. That's where I
Hmm.
started. That's why I have over 100 trials because I took some really bad cases early in my career and just got in there and tried them and then won enough of them to get trusted with other types of cases. And for a long time it was automotive product liability because someone wouldn't give me a trucking death case, but they'd give me a crash worthiness case that they didn't think they could handle on their own. And then eventually was getting enough good work in where I saw that I could specialize in it and have enough work to keep the firm going. And it's worked really well for me. But it does, finding one thing that you're really good at is a really good thing. But you also have to be realistic, like, where are you in the market? If in 1999, when my boss left and I ended up on my own, I'd have said, I'm only going to be a catastrophic injury and death trucking lawyer, 3.5 years out of law school with like $5,000 maybe in the bank, I would have failed. I mean, nobody would have given me a big case back then, nor should they have. So, I do recommend specializing when it's the right time. But at the same time, you need to be realistic. Like, let's say that, they suddenly invented a magic robot truck that's not going to get in a crash anymore and I had to find something else to do. Tomorrow I'm not going to just say I'm going to be the biggest asbestos lawyer in the world when I've never done an asbestos case. You got to work your way up and get there. But yeah, trucking is really nice because there's a really good set of rules. When you learn them, you can win cases other people can't win. And it's very, once you get through the learning curve, it's a very nice way to make a living.
So how do you get most of your business, your clients?
Attorney referral. It's
So
99% attorney referral.
99% attorney referral. That doesn't happen overnight.
No, that is really, it's about relationships. And part of it, you have to really look at, what's in it for the people that are referring you the cases. And so one, you do have to do good legal work. But as
Hmm.
proud as I am of my law firm, we aren't the only law firm in the country, or Texas even, that can do a really great job on trucking cases. There are other great law firms out there. And so one thing I've done to develop my referral relationships is I just took people and asked them, like, what is it you like and what is it that really bothers you about referral relationships? And what I found that people really, their pain points are, I send a case over and no one gets back to me. I don't know whether you're taking it or not. And then, either months later, I'm told, oh, it's not a good case, or a couple years later, I either get a check in the mail or I get a phone call saying, hey, there's some problems with the case. Will you cut your fee? So, one is good communication. Two, they don't like it. Hey, I sent a case over there and the client's calling me and complaining they're not getting good service. And then three is lawyers, and I never would have dreamed of doing this, but some lawyers try to change the deal. They agree on the front end to pay a certain referral fee. And then at the end, well, we had to do more work and spend more money. So can you take less? And you could probably do that once, but you're not going to ever get another referral from them. So what we try to do is proactively make sure that we give our referral partners the experience they want. And so we talk to everybody saying, we're going to update you at least once a month on your cases. How do you want to be updated? What level of detail do you want? So some people want a monthly Zoom with me to go all over all their cases. I have somebody I'm going to meet with them on Thursday. I've been meeting with them once a month for the last 10 years. Uh,
Hmm.
some people want an email. Some people want, different levels of it, but we find out what they want. I have someone her main job is to meet with our lawyers. She gets their monthly file reviews. There's a section like, what do we need to do to update the referral lawyer? She goes and talks to them if there are any more questions. And then she gives every referral partner an update every month in the manner in the form that they want it, with the information they wanted. Then we make sure that we keep our clients very happy. So if you refer us the case, one, we make sure we train our people, like, don't talk bad about the referral partner. If someone's frustrated, you don't talk bad, you talk them up. But also we make sure that and we track it, we have dashboards and we track client communications and we make sure that our clients are informed. And, our paralegals don't get their bonuses if they don't keep their clients up to date every month. And this has to be documented and it's audited. And of course, then we never change the deal on them. I mean, if the case, was a tough case, then we get our small piece, our half or our 60% of a small fee. That's life. We don't go try to change the deal on somebody just because, the case wasn't as good as when we thought it was, because they're not asking to change it when the case goes really great for us. And I guess the other thing is we really try to look for, like, what do they love? What else can we do for them? So for our biggest referral partners, we found out, like, what are your bucket list experiences? And, we try to meet them. So, I've taken a bunch of lawyers to a truck driving school in Montana, and they got to learn how to drive 18-wheelers. And then they got a bunch of video and photos of them driving 18-wheelers and doing other things that they could then use for their marketing to get more cases for themselves, which then led to more referrals for us. And no one else is doing that for them. Everybody else is that I took someone to the Super Bowl this year. We take them to sporting events, fishing, whatever it is they love. We try to provide that.
So, what is it that you say? So that why is somebody, uh, a firm, going to uh, send you these referrals on a regular basis versus, hey, I'm going to do that myself, and we're going to keep all the fees on that. And why are they sending it to you?
And it really has to be a case where we add value. And so it's a couple things. One is time, and another is expertise. So you only have 24 hours in a day, and the
Hmm.
skill set of marketing, making clients feel really good at the beginning, making sure all the things that need to happen at the beginning of the case, and then trying to run kind of a volume pre-litigation practice. It's a different skill set than being an aggressive litigator that can get a case set for trial within a year of the crash. Uh, and frankly, the fact that we try a lot of cases, we get bigger offers because of that. And we have the expertise, that all of our referral partners are smart people. They could, if they spent years dedicated to it, learn what we do. But then they wouldn't be doing all the things that they're great at. And the fact is, there are a bunch of things I don't have to do that I'm not good at, that don't bring me energy and joy, that they do and that they're good at. And so it's really just finding that synergy of, they get to focus on what they like and what they're good at. We get to focus on what we like and what we're good at, and then we all do better together.
So you said that two identical truck crash cases can settle for hundreds of thousands or millions, depending on how the lawyer handles it. What's the single biggest thing that, if you could say, this is the single biggest area that I see the mistakes that attorneys make when they're doing this?
Ooh, single biggest. Ooh. Well, for the hundreds of thousands to millions, and then for the millions to tens of millions, they're going to be two different things. So the hundreds of thousands to millions would be not paying attention to your client, not going to your client's house, getting to know them, getting to know their family so you can understand the full extent of their injuries, not being willing to go to trial. Until you go try some cases, you never get full value because they track who will settle and take the last offer or who will go try it. And we often have cases go from we'll never even pay you $1 million on a case, like even the week before trial, till then we're trying it and they're offering multiple millions of dollars to get it settled because we didn't chicken out and they see that we're kicking their butt. Uh, the other thing that sometimes to get a case that someone else has settled for $1 million, where we've gotten 10, 20 million or up, have been realizing who all the responsible parties are in a trucking case and how to prove their liability. So a lot of times it looks like there's a little mom and pop company, one truck, limited coverage, and it turns out a mega trucking company actually originally accepted that load and subbed it out, and there's some legal doctrines that allow us to hook the big company, because if they accepted the load as a motor carrier and they subbed it out, or if they were a broker and they hired an unsafe motor carrier, or they're Amazon and wants to claim that they don't control them and they're independent contractors when in fact they really do control them and they are liable for them, then we've been able to get a lot of money on cases that other people would have settled for $1 million or less.
So one of your investigations led to a Hercules tire recall of defective Chinese-made tires after you pushed NHTSA to act. Walk me through how a personal injury lawyer ends up forcing a national tire recall, which is a pretty big deal.
That is one of the two proudest things I have in my career is I have a huge trucking company. I can't say who it is for confidentiality reasons, but changed their policy manual to prohibit something super dangerous that had killed two people in two different wrecks. And after a trial last year, and now hopefully those will never happen again. And this tire recall. So I had a case, one of the best clients I ever had. She lost her arm from right above the elbow in a rollover that was caused by a Chinese-made tire detreading. And when we got into the case, we found out that the tire set on the sidewall, and in the marketing materials, it had something called a nylon cap ply, which is a safety feature that helps prevent tires from experiencing tread separations.
Hmm.
And during our case, they had actually recalled the particular tire that was made in our case. But in discovery, we learned that the Capital Precision Track 2, which was a tire in our case, in the exact same factory with the exact same design, they made the Hercules tire. It's just same tire, just a different brand name on it. And they had the same defect in that tire, but they hadn't recalled that one. And so didn't charge it the client, but I hired somebody that helped me contact the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, submit a petition, and we ended up getting it granted and forced the recall of those tires. And, so that way someone else doesn't have to lose their arm or lose their life. I would much rather, money is great. And not that I'm a capitalist, I like making money. But one of the frustrating things about what we do is that money doesn't bring people back, and money
Right.
doesn't make a paralyzed person walk again or grow an arm back. And so if we can do something to save the next life, to improve safety, we always want to take those opportunities. You only get so many in a career, so when you get them, you got to take them.
All right. So you talk about casting your villain. I like the idea of that in trucking cases. What does that mean, and why is it the driver's employer and not the driver? Or how do you
Yeah.
isolate?
Well, it's hopefully the driver's employer. You have to look at the facts of each case, and you don't want to just say, I have a can story I'm going to tell in every case, because that's not true and that doesn't ring true. But
Hmm.
what I've done, and it doesn't just apply in trucking cases, it's any kind of case, is human beings think in stories. And so if you just spit out a bunch of facts, the jurors are going to then filter those facts into a story in their own minds. And so if you don't provide a story for them, you lose control of the narrative and what story they're going to come up with. Then if you're not careful, it's going to be the story of the bad lawyer working with the doctor trying to make a mountain out of a molehill. So you got to really think about what the story is going to be. So what I did is I looked at, what is the story structure that we're familiar with as Americans? And it's really what the hero's journey. You can look at Harry Potter, Star Wars, but you take an ordinary person that's pulled out of their ordinary world and they go into this new, weird, strange world, which is a courtroom for jurors, and they meet a trustworthy guy that introduces them to this world and basically gives them the tools that they need to go fight the villain and save the day. Well, the jurors are only people in the jury room, so they have to be the heroes of the stories. And that was a big liberating thing for me. I'm not the hero. I'm just helping guide the heroes, introduce them to this weird world with all these crazy rules, and empower them and give them the tools they need through the evidence, the testimony, to do their jobs. But you also need a villain. So I looked at, like, what are, in screenwriting and story writing, what are the characteristics that make a villain? There's really 4 that apply to our cases. A good villain is immoral. They don't care about other people. They just care about what they want. And that's really, putting profits over safety, being willing to take safety risks to make more money. They're deceptive. They try to hide what they did wrong. They try to get away with it. And then a really good villain is intelligent and powerful. I mean, I'm going to date myself by talking about Star Wars, but it's not the stormtrooper that's the villain. It's Darth Vader. And so we look for that in our cases. Who can be the villain? Now, if you look at a truck driver versus a trucking company, even though non-economic damages aren't supposed to have anything to do with how big a defendant is, what their resources is, in talking to jurors, what we found is they'll say, like, we want to do what's right for the plaintiff, but we also don't want to bankrupt the defendant usually. And so what does it take to bankrupt a truck driver? 100 grand, 200 grand? I mean, that's,
Hmm.
most of them would never be able to pay that.
Right.
So, you want to look at the systematic failures, to the extent the law will let you do it, of the company. And so we're always looking for ways that, yes, the driver did wrong, but the driver was put in a bad situation by the company because the company wanted to make more money or spend less money to increase its own profits and didn't care about the people. And then we're always looking for, like, how does the company try to hide things? How are they doing things that are deceptive? So that's kind of the whole point of the villain. It doesn't just work in trucking cases. It works in other kind of cases too, but that's my only unique contribution to trial advocacy. Everything else I've learned from other people, so I'm proud of it.
I think that you end up telling a story most of the time. It sounds like, is that
Every case is a story, and if you don't have a story, it means you haven't done the work. And part of the story is, like, it's not just going through and, like, people always ask me, like, can I get your form outline for this? Like, I don't have a form outline. Every case, I think, what happened? What are the reasons it could have happened? Which of these are most likely? And then I do a root cause analysis, which is, you ask the 5 whys. Why did it happen? You keep asking why till you get to the root cause. It's not just that someone rear-ended somebody, it's that they were pushed to drive too many hours, or that they
hmm
were not properly trained. And it almost always comes back to money.
So you got a $17.5 million verdict in a product liability case where your client had a below knee amputation from a forklift
Yeah.
crash. What turned that what was a moment in that trial that turned
Yeah,
things?
I'm super proud of that one because it was a stand-up forklift, and they have one person every 8 days has a foot crushed, and most of them result in amputations and stand-up forklifts because you're standing up where you're operating them. It's really easy to lose your balance. If you lose your balance, you naturally step back. Your foot's now outside of the forklift, and if it hits something, it gets crushed. But the industry had won every trial for over 20 years. I didn't know that when I took the case, or I wouldn't have taken it. But it had been over 20 years since the plaintiffs had a victory in that case. The defense lawyer we're trying against was 23-0. And so the key moment actually happened before the trial, and that some of the other lawyers that had lost their trials were nice enough to talk to us, and we found out where was the defense going to come from, and what had the plaintiffs been doing that hadn't been working. And what the plaintiffs were doing is saying, well, to keep the leg in, you need to put a door instead of having an open entryway, you need to put a door behind the person. And the defense had really been successfully showing, hey, if you put a door in there, it's harder to get out. And so, yeah, you're going to save some feet. But then when these things tip over or go off a dock, people are going to get brain injuries, death, and quadriplegia. And so we're making a reasonable choice. We're sacrificing some feet to save some brains and necks and keep people out of wheelchairs and keep people out of coffins. And that was really effective. And so the biggest thing we did is we kind of flipped it around on them. It's like we were able to show you all have known about this problem since the 1980s. And you've done nothing to try to fix it. You spent a lot of money to try to defend yourself in lawsuits, and all the testing you've done has been trying to show how dangerous it is to have a door in there. You've done nothing to try to fix it. So I used two examples. I said, does anyone here remember 1986? I mean, I know not all the jurors maybe were born then, but for those of us who were, remember 1986, they were just coming out with cell phones. It was like a huge briefcase you would have to carry with you. It was super expensive. And computers, they had the Commodore 64 kilobytes of memory. That was like a cutting edge computer. I mean, my family had the TRS 80. I had 16 and a cassette player. I didn't have the
trash
that,
80.
Yep. And so, and now what do we have today? And I pulled out my phone. We have the iPhone that for less money does more powerful computing, smaller, more powerful phone. Why is that? Because companies spent engineering time and money to solve a problem. And I got them to admit that from the 1980s, when we could prove that they're aware of this problem, for 40 years, they had not spent 1 second of engineering time nor 1 penny trying to solve the problem. And then we came up with solutions other than that. So the door is one solution. You could also put a seat in it with a seat belt like you put in Europe. And we found the forklifts that they made in Europe that they didn't sell in the U.S. that actually had solved the problem. They didn't market them that way, but we were able to show that they solved the problem. So we came up with there are multiple ways, and who knows what they could have come up with. And then in closing, I said, well, we talked a lot about the last 40 years. And my client was an incredible young man. He was an engineering student that had a part-time job in the summer when he got the injury. And he testified his goal was to get a PhD in biomedical engineering so he can help develop better prosthetics. And so we talked about the last 40 years and how many of these injuries there had been. I said, well, let's talk about the next 40 years. Let's just say 40 years from now, Dr. Christopher Zeski was my client. He's curious, so he's going to go back and he's going to look at the same OSHA databases we've heard so much about in this trial. And he wants to look, did what happened to me make a difference? Did anything change? What is he going to find? Is he going to find that we're still losing 1 foot every week? And there have been hundreds and hundreds of these? Or is he going to find that they've gone down to almost zero? Because there's a paper saying with these fixes you can get them down to almost zero. That's up to you. And that's how I ended my closing. So,
wow. That was effective. Obviously, it was really effective.
Yeah.
But
I'm really proud of that one.
So have they come up with some solutions on that?
I don't know. I mean, there are solutions that they're very, very, very stubborn industry. I am proud that one of the lawyers who had not had as much success at trial, who was nice enough to work with us in developing our strategy, then we shared all our materials, and then he got a verdict for $13 million like a month later. I've actually not taken any more of those cases. I got lucky once, and I'm sticking to the trucking. I got a lot of offers on them, but there's other really brilliant lawyers that's what they do well, and I'm letting them do it.
So you refer those out?
They're almost all coming from other lawyers, so I don't get a fee on them. But yeah, I'm saying like I am not the best lawyer for this case. There's a guy named
Okay.
Michael Warshire in Georgia who's incredible at these cases, and I would call him before I would call me.
So your partner Sonia Rodriguez won an $8.5 million verdict after the jury deliberated 2.5 hours.
Yeah,
What does it take to get a jury to move like that?
that was a really interesting case. I think it was Sonia and I tried that together actually. So
Okay.
I was really surprised because I was driving home. It was my second trial that month, and it was my second multi-week, more than 1 week out of town trial that month. And so I said, Sonia, can you take the verdict? I want to go home. It was like, and the drive, it was a little while before I could get to the car, and it was like a 2 hour drive from the courthouse to my home. And we got a verdict before I got home. And I was wondering the whole trial, during jury selection, Travis County jurors, Austin, Texas jurors, I think were a good jury pool.
Hmm.
I was always wondering if I did a good job in jury selection because, does anyone here have a problem with, millions of dollars for pain and suffering? And one hand went up. I'm like, I'm not doing a very good job. But it turned out that they just were not a very pro-corporate jury. I think that was part of it. I think the other part is we were able to show that there were multiple people getting hurt from this dangerous condition and a company that was refusing to do anything about it. And the jurors didn't like that. And I think that was big.
So
We were able to show the video of not just my client falling, but the two other people falling and getting the same injury. And it was like a 14-foot fall into steel. And they still, at the time of trial, had not changed a darn thing.
when you make your final summation at a trial, how often do you feel like, okay, I know it's going to go this way and I know it's going to go that way? How confident do you feel about, I mean, when you put it in the hands of these 12 strangers, how confident do you feel like you can ever go away and think, oh, we got this one? Or is
No,
it always like,
I mean, before summation, never. During the closing argument, there is a energy feeling, and I can at least feel with some of the jurors that they're there, and I can sometimes feel with some of the jurors they're not. But you can't read everybody, and I don't think that you can read them. All I do is I just tell myself, I have a mantra: the jurors are good people. They're taking time out of their lives because they want to do the right thing. I can trust them. They will do justice. And the more that I'm calm and trusting, the more likely I am to win. But the biggest problem is you can feel the energy from a few jurors, but you don't know what the interaction is once they get the 12 of them or whatever the number is in that jury room, and kind of the horse trading and the having to persuade each other. That's really unpredictable. And I've seen it in
hmm
focus groups where we'll do, let's say we do a presentation to 30 people and we break them up into 3 rooms of 10. We sometimes get 3 wildly different results.
oh, that's interesting. So you've been on faculty at Jerry Spence's Trial Lawyers College, and I've had several other attorneys that I've talked to that have really talked really highly about that. What did Spence teach you about connecting with a jury that law school doesn't?
Yeah, and I've been off the faculty by my own choice for a long time, but that's neither here nor there. But Jerry was instrumental in my career. I was able to go there 3 years out of law school, and I think one is human beings make decisions on emotion and then justify their emotional decision with logic, and so trying to
Hmm.
learn the emotional core of the case, learning to put myself in my client's shoes and put myself in the defendant's shoes. I mean, basically try to, uh, instead of just how would I think or how would I feel, trying to learn how other people feel and learning their stories and then how to tell a good story. I mean, the storytelling really that I got really started, that journey started with Jerry. Uh,
So I'm curious. So after well over 100 trials, when you go into a courtroom and you start your initial opening statements, do you still get nervous?
Not often. Nervous is the wrong word. I mean, the only time I really get nervous is while the jury's deliberating, and then especially between the time that they say they read, you get the note saying the jury has a verdict until the time the judge reads the verdict is where I feel the most nervous. I have really, really come to accept, and it's taken a lot of work, that I have no control over the outcome of a trial. I have control over my output, the work I'm going to do, and I can maximize my chances of winning by doing things right and not doing stupid things. But ultimately, the case is the jury's case. They're going to decide what happened. And at the end of the day, while I believe my clients, I wasn't there. I didn't see what happened. And so I am no longer going to have the hubris that this trial is about me at all. I am merely a piece of it. My job is to give the jury what they need to do the right thing and to trust them to do it. And so that has taken away so much stress when it's not my job to win the case, it's my job to empower the jurors. And just that mental shift. And it's made trial just fun. So I have the best time in trial.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you've cited research suggesting that over 300,000 truck drivers on the road today would fail a hair follicle drug test.
Yep.
How is that possible when there's all this drug testing that's supposedly mandatory?
Well, if you know you're having a drug test and you know when it's going to happen, you can be clean for a little while. You can drink stuff like urine luck. It's spelled urine and then luck, but it sounds like urine luck, where you drink that and it waters down and masks the marijuana. You can buy synthetic urine at a head shop, and the urine will get like clean urine, and it's got a thing in there that will raise it up to the right body temperature. And it's because they're not observed drug tests. No one's watching you fill up that cup. You could bring in someone else's urine as long as you get like a thing that you can buy at a head shop that will heat it up. And you can also have someone else take your drug test for you, especially if you have a unscrupulous employer or unscrupulous drug testing place. And then there's been a recent controversy or scandal, I should say, that there's actually someone out there that, like, if someone tests positive for drugs, there's a whole rehabilitation process they're supposed to go through. Someone is just like signing off on those for money, even though the person didn't do anything to rehabilitate themselves. So yeah, there's a huge problem. When they do hair follicle tests, they find that like a massive spike in people either saying, no, I'm out of here, or testing positive.
So why don't they? Why isn't that the standard instead of pissing in a cup?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a really good question. And lobbyists, companies that would rather. Now, I will say there are some trucking companies do hair follicle testing. They have the right to do it
Okay.
if they choose to do so. So there are very, very, very few that do, and I commend them. And they probably have a lot less crashes. But there's a lot of trucking companies that look the other way because they need drivers, and they want to pay less. And
Right.
the other thing is, the trucking industry treats their drivers so badly. They really treat them like crap. And I think if they were going to be stricter on the driver qualifications, the drug testing, the people's driving records, they would not only have to maybe pay a little better, but treat a little bit more humanely, treat with a little bit more respect, and it would really have to change the industry. I think it would not only be more safer, but truck drivers would have more dignity, a lot more like they was in like the 60s and 70s than it is now.
So when you say the trucking companies treat their drivers poorly, I was going to say like, well, when they does that help your story of painting the
Uh,
evil villain in the
Absolutely. So think about it this way. You get tricked into this, you can make this money, you're going to be your own boss, you're going to be what's called an owner operator. So you've got to lease the truck from us, you've got to make all these payments. Now you're responsible for the fuel, you're responsible for the maintenance, and we're going to pay you by the mile. Now we're going to go send you to pick up your load. Now you've got a 14-hour driving window in which you can drive 11 hours every day legally. Now when you show up to go get your load, you've already started that 14-hour clock. Now when you get there, you might be sitting there 5, 6, 7 hours waiting to get loaded. You're not getting paid for any of that time. And when you talk about the disrespect and inhumane treatment, they don't want those dirty truck drivers messing up the bathroom. So you can't even use the bathroom at the warehouse where you're picking up. You're having to pee into like a 1 gallon water jug that you're keeping them there so you can pee in them until you can go find a place to dump them, because they won't let you. They don't want the dirty truck drivers messing up their bathrooms. And so then after you've been sitting there for 7 hours, if you follow the rules, you can't get enough miles that day to make your payment on the truck. And so now you have to make a living. Do I cheat and do something dangerous? Or do I not make enough money to make my truck payment and feed my family? It's just really horrible treatment. And they push them to do things that are unsafe, but it's just really, the more I've learned about this industry, the more love and sympathy I feel for the drivers, and the more anger I feel towards the industry as a whole and certain companies in particular.
So is this where going to someone's house and finding out really everything about them and what's going on in their life and what's going on in the company, and what is this where that really makes a difference?
Well, that's yes and no. I mean, I can't go to the defendant's house and really get the defendant truck driver suing and get to know
No,
him.
no, no. Yeah,
But I have represented a bunch of truck drivers, and so
right.
spending
When
time
you're
with
doing that,
them has really helped me learn things about how it works. And then one of my lawyers that works for us, her father's a truck driver, and so we're able to learn a lot. She grew up; her dad would take her along on trips, so she's been. I mean, she's like a baby lawyer. She's 3 or 4 years out of school, but she's been educational for me because she was a little girl riding on one of those trucks. She can talk about what it's like and teach me about it. But the going to my client's house is really more of a, yeah, getting to know their human story and what they call non-economic damages. So how has this injury affected them? And so what I'm looking for is, what do they love to do before? What brought joy to their life before this? And you get some of that by talking to people, but you also see, what are the pictures they have on their wall? How do they interact with their family, and how do people joke with each other? What stories are they telling? And then what are they left with now? And so, how has this injury affected them, or how has the loss of somebody affected not just the person that's hurt, but their whole family and the people around them? So you can tell that story. And the third thing we don't always find, but we're always looking for it, is what is the hope for the future? Like, how can money help make this life better? You can't bring it back to what it was before, but you can make it better than it is now. And so we look for all those, and then we try to look for like pictures and videos so we can tell a really compelling, interesting story to the jury. And then we look for enough people that can come in and tell stories that each one can testify for like 15 to 20 minutes max. So instead of having one person on the stand for 3 hours, we have a
hmm
lot of like 10 to 20-minute witnesses, which is a lot more entertaining for the jury.
So the minimum insurance for 80,000 pound truck hasn't changed in decades. What does that mean for a family when they're involved in some sort of crash?
Well, it's awful. It's not. It's been 750,000 minimum since 1980. Uh, it has not changed. And if you think of the costs of everything, 1980, the gas pump, the sign at the gas pump only had cents. There wasn't even the thought of $1 a gallon gas was not even there. I mean, everything's so much more expensive. And the problem with 80,000 pound trucks, I mean, so you paralyze one person, the medical bills alone can exceed $1 million. And a lot of times these trucks, they don't just hit one vehicle. I mean, we have cases where, you get a speeding truck driver goes into a construction zone where all the traffic stopped, and it hits 5, 6 cars, kills 3 or 4 people, puts a bunch of other people in the hospital. And there's not enough money for anybody to get anything, forget like to actually taking care of people. So it is, I know there have been multiple legislative efforts. There's a bill that just got filed actually this week, or last week, to raise the limits to be indexed with inflation. But the trucking industry has always lobbied against it, and both political parties, both when the Democrats had control, and then when the Republicans have control, have not had the intestinal fortitude to raise the limits to where they need to be.
So what's the one thing that people don't know about the trucking industry that would change how they drive on the highway tomorrow?
That driver who's next to you is probably exhausted and not very well trained. And so do not drive alongside them. If they're less than 5, 6 seconds behind you in following distance, switch lanes and don't let them drive behind you. And just be on the lookout for them to do something weird, because you have a lot of people without a lot of training that are just being worked so many hours that they're just exhausted and they make bad decisions.
So your firm has a tagline: settlements the size of Texas. How do you build a culture where everyone on the team gets behind that?
I And I don't know if I can take credit for it because it's really been hit and miss. We've had a lot of people come through here, but we've developed a really good team of people that really care about their clients and are very proud of what they do and very competitive. It's a very healthy competition with each other. So, I settled a case for like 22.5 million last fall. And then my partner Sonia says, well, I just beat you. I just sold one for 26. I'm like, keep beating me. So Mallory, now you're next. You got to go. You got to beat. You seen the bar. You got to go beat that. But they're also very collaborative. We like before anyone is allowed to send a demand or go to mediation. Every Tuesday we do roundtables. So every case gets presented to the whole firm, and we brainstorm with each other. We help each other, and lift each other up. And so there's like no jealousy, which is really a testament to who I put together and the culture we built. But like everyone's happy for each other. Everyone celebrates each other. And, everyone cares about not only our clients, but our firm and doing really good work.
So I didn't make it through many of the questions. You're a great guest, and I want to thank you, for coming on the show. Um, and it, and I think we'll just wind it up right there. Thanks so much for coming on, Michael. I
Well,
really
thank you so much
appreciate
for
it.
having me. I enjoyed it.